Hey, what's up? It's your boy BobbySapphire, and today we are going to be looking at updating the Mono Yellow Boba deck for Shadows of the Galaxy. I'm making this video for Patreon subscribers. If you're seeing this on YouTube, I released this a couple weeks ago privately in our Discord, and this is the kind of content that I make regularly for subscribers and then release it publicly a couple weeks later. You should be seeing this right before Gen Con in case you want to use this to think about updating your list. So I don't usually like tier list, but tiermaker.com lets you sort of modify things. And I saw, or Maddie found, a Pokemon YouTuber that lined up his stuff like this. So yeah, we're gonna do it and talk about cards and where they belong. And I'm just kind of gonna go. I think they got added sort of randomly, so I'm just gonna go in that order. I think Forlom is really, really, really good. And it's hard to talk about Forlom without talking about Zuckuss because I think 4-4 for 4 isn't great right now. So much of the meta is 3-5 dependent, and Forlom doesn't kill it. So I would really look for a place where Forlom is really good. It could also be that he's just not great in Mono Boba. But actually, let me pull Zuckuss because I do think Zuckuss is almost an auto include, even without Boba Fett. If we're able to push damage the way Boba Fett Yellow usually does, dropping this as a 6/6 is pretty insane. It's hard for them to deal with. So I'm thinking about auto including it as a one of, possibly more, with Forloms in the sideboard is sort of where I'm looking for these. But I think like Zuckuss is so good, I want to consider auto including it. I don't really want to cut Syndicate Lackeys, and I don't really want to cut Cantina Bouncers. But if I can fit at least one Zuckuss in my deck, I'm probably going to try and do it, and then I'll keep Forlom in the sideboard. Um, a New Adventure, I think, is really insane. I've been testing with it. A bunch of people in the Discord have been testing with it and reporting great results. If you've been playing against any bounty decks, this is really important. It's one of the only ways to knock off your bounties. Actually, while we're talking about that, I guess that's a good segue to McClunky, but we've talked about A New Adventure a lot, but being able to rebuy your on play trigger effects, it triggers Bosk, it lets you re-ambush, it heals your guys, it lets you attack again with Fire Spray. It's just really insane. And then McClunky, I don't see, here it is. McClunky I think is also meta-dependent sideboard. When McClunky first came out, I was super high on it, but after seeing the format, it's really tough to just be bouncing your stuff. We don't have a lot of cheap stuff. I think McClunky really shines in like a Cad Bane deck, but I do think it's still good in this deck because it lets us kill things and continue to push damage. Because essentially we're bouncing for free, getting the untap with Boba and replaying that. It's just a lot of the times we don't want to be replaying. We want to be building the board. So that's where McClunky kind of falters. But again, it's one of the only ways to deal with bounties on your guys. So I like it. All right, let's go back down here. Bazine and auto include. I think she's at least a 2 of in every build. I don't know if she's always going to be a 3 of. I don't know if those 2 are always going to be in the 60, but she's proven her worth. She can brick their hand if you're on the play. Taking her only 2-drop and hoping they don't pop one, it just gives you so much more time to get the damage in. This Black Sun, whatever, Sentinel, I don't think is constructed playable. It's a 3 cost for 3/2. We just 3 drops are all just jammed up. I think Boba Fett's armor is really insane. I'm gonna put it in the meta dependent list. I'm gonna have to shrink my image over there. I see this as a sideboard card. I'm not currently playing it main. If Kira is popular, then I could see playing this main to kind of keep Boba Fett alive. But otherwise, I just think that this slows us down a little bit. It doesn't super work with our flip turn. Do we need a 6/9 Boba Fett to win? Maybe, maybe not. I usually find if someone's working really hard to kill my Boba Fett, I can use the rest of my deck to push damage and win. All right, first one down here, Bounty Guild Initiate. Definitely requires a specific build, and that build is usually one with Toro. This guy's great with Toro. He comes in, he damages something, he takes one ping himself, and he readies Toro. He's great for Boba having 1-drops that he can play off the untap. But all in all, I'm not really looking at the Initiate unless I'm playing a Toro deck. And that being said, I have tested some full Toro Boba Fett decks, and they're good. They're solid. You get to run, this tier list would look a lot different. Zuckuss, Forlom, Bounty Hunter Guild, Toro, even Chain Code Collector would probably all be an auto include if we were building that list out. But for now, I think like that requires a specific build, and the one that I'm talking about today, I guess I should clarify, is just your well-rounded. Sorry, it's the stock list from set one is what we're talking about. Cloud Rider, um, I don't think that this is not constructed playable per se, because I think we will see it in constructed a lot. But when it comes to this deck, it's not what our goal is. Our goal is to not like jam something out and kill. You know, there's nothing for 3 HP. There's nothing with 3 HP that we really, really need to kill. So we're not really looking at that. I think DJ is an auto include. He's another 3/5 that we get, and he has a smuggle cost, and that smuggle cost can be backbreaking to control decks and actually take their resource off the board, prevent like Vader from flipping, prevent them from playing a Vader or a Maul or a Super Laser Blast. Avazan is meta-dependent sideboard, but he could be a coaster. I mean, I've gotten back into games because of Avazan, but also like I've played against Avazan and triggered his bounty when he's like in Grand Inquisitor, and it just doesn't matter. He can still overrun and kill you. He doesn't really matter what you're doing. So I think in the right meta, a 3/3 for 2 is just really good. And I've also been playing like 1 or 2 and using it as a late drop. Like when we go wide, it can be really strong. You know, if we're going to finish off our opponent that turn, but like you don't want to give them an opportunity to walk into it. So I'm going to say Avazan is meta-dependent sideboard. Dredden Voss is pretty insane. He's been really good in testing, not necessarily in this deck, but in some of the control decks. I'm going to say he requires a certain build, and that's one built around a lot of capture. And speaking of capture, we can just add Relentless Pursuit into the auto include. I'm not playing 0 of this card. I'm playing 1 or 2. I'm probably not playing 3 because it's just such a liability to play on your non-leader. But, man, putting a shield on Boba Fett is pretty insane and triggers the Boba Fett flip turn. Emphas Nest is a good card, but I think it's not constructed playable here. It just, not what we want to be doing for 6 especially. It's pretty far down the line. We're not trying to ambush our units to have them die too often. Enticing Reward is really good, but again, we're not killing anything. You know, I've seen this work so well in some decks that I want to put it up here, but I'm going to say that it's not constructed playable, and it's the only bounty that I think that I would include in not constructed playable. Like, I'll just throw these other bounties right in. They'll be our first coasters. Actually, the smugglers, you know, Zuckus' ship is a coaster. All right, Final Showdown. I love this card. I haven't necessarily pulled it off yet, but I think it's definitely an insane sideboard card and could be insane in the meta as well. If we're able to build a yellow Boba deck that can get ahead and, you know, our opponent claims because they want to do something like Super Laser Blast next turn, this is the card we want to have. I kind of wish this card had Smuggle. Don't I wish all cards had Smuggle? But I do think that this is going to have some play in the meta, and even though I'm sad it's a legendary, I'll be happy to pull at least 2. All right, Frozen Carbonite. This card's a coaster. Doesn't actually do anything. You know, it costs 1 more than No Good to Me Dead, and if we're playing this deck, we don't want to live long enough that we need them to stay tapped for more than 2 turns. Fugitive Wookiee, I think, is really good. I want to include it in auto. It might end up being auto, but I think it's meta-dependent sideboard card. One thing I've noticed playing Bazine and Bib in some builds is we're really struggling to get the damage in. It almost makes me miss the Probe Droid. But we also don't want to, like, we're trying to do damage, so we don't want our stuff to be tapped, and this built-in bounty is really, really rough for that. Hunter of the Haxion Brood, I think this is a coaster. I don't think we're ever considering it. It's got upside. I mean, I guess we played Swoop Racer, right? So but that was set 1. We just don't have any bounties. I guess like in a meta where everyone was playing bounty cards, that maybe, but I don't. Since we're never triggering that, I don't see that it ever like goes in above Swoop Racer or whatever other 4/3 we've got. This Slaver Freighter, that's a coaster. It's not doing. We're not playing that for 5. Jetpack is interesting. I don't hate it. I know some of my teammates, Chrono likes it. I'm not a huge fan of it. I know that it's got Smuggle. That's cool. But if I'm smuggling, I want to be Hotshot Blast Ring. And that's an auto include in this deck for me. I'm going to have at least one of these, if not more. It's just so good out of the row, and it can take the place of a surprise strike. Oftentimes we're rowing surprise strikes early in the game, and that sort of helps us there. Maybe Jetpack is good because you get that shield if you play it for the turn. But in general, +2/+0, I'm not necessarily looking at that being huge. And the only reason we're looking at this is because we can smuggle it. You know, if you caught me a couple days ago, I would say that this is an auto include. But man, if we fall behind and they buy this from us, we are just really, really screwed. It can let our opponents. It can lead to our opponents just like focusing on the ground and getting so far ahead, and they take this, and we've got absolutely nothing. So I'm actually going to put this in not constructed playable, even though it's a 3/2 ship. No Bargain is an interesting anti-control card. They discard, we draw, but that's not what we really want to be doing in this deck, so I'm going to make it a coaster. Lurking Tie Phantom, I think, is a meta-dependent sideboard card. It's really good. 3 is just so jammed, as I've said. How do we fit this in when we have Boba Fett, we have DJ, we have Toro, we have 7th Fleet Defender, and now we've got to fit this in? I like this a little bit better in green, where you can like have it as an insane pull with Vader late in the game. But yeah, as is, I'm not putting it in too many of my main decks or even my sideboards. But I guess if they don't make an opening, that's a strong sideboard consideration. All right, I was gonna think about putting this guy, the Ruthless Bounty Hunter. I wish these names were bigger. He's a 3/3 that damages a unit for 2. This can have some synergy when you can like soak it on a shield with Crafty Smuggler, or even like hit your Bazine for 2. But it can't trigger Toro on its own because he would just die. So I'm going to say it's not constructed playable, even though it's kind of interesting. The Seek is actually kind of chill. Getting a shielded guy for 2, you never want to play it on 2, but late game, it's not terrible. So I don't hate it as like a one of if we need space. We probably don't. Oh, no, I don't think it's constructed playable in this deck. We have too many better options. Triple Dark Raid just requires a specific build, and that doesn't mean you need an all-space build. I actually think this card is being slept on because people want to put too many vehicles in their deck. I think this can just be really good with a new adventure to get your Fire Spray out early and put it back into play. So I'm really looking at these two being together in that they require a specific build. I don't think I would play Triple Dark Raid without ANA. I would want to shoot for that upside. And I'd probably play things like Lurking Tie Phantom. I wouldn't go all vehicles, but I would definitely be heavy vehicle. Bounty posting. I wouldn't put this as a coaster because if you were going to play a bunch of bounties, I think this card is pretty insane. So I'll put it under requires specific build. Criminal Muscle. I don't think this is constructed playable. It's borderline coaster, but it does bounce shields and experience. So like for 1, I guess that's Deece. It's like a very utilitous ability that you could use with Boba Fett's on tap. Evacuation, I think, is not constructed playable in this deck. Is that going to be our last one that's not constructed playable? I'll just say it requires a specific build. It would be one that we would want to be a little bit more controlling. Fennec Shand, 7-drop. We don't really curve to 7. You know, we're not really trying to ambush, but if there was a card that we were going to include that we did want ambush in 7 and was going to survive, I think that this is it. I think that she's pretty good, and I could see her as a sideboard card. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put her in meta-dependent sideboard. Kintan Intimidator, 1/4 Underworld, Exhaust the Defender. Like, I don't see a world where we're playing this. We'd have to be like an aggro Underworld deck. I think it's only good in CAD. Same with Proxima. I think she's a coaster in this deck. I think she's only good in CAD Bane. Swoop Down, I'm going to also say is a coaster. Does this work? No, I want to alt it like it's a certain program I use. We're not attacking from the air into the ground. It's just not going to happen. Look the Other Way is a total coaster. 0 costs. They get paid to tap. Frontier Trader, another coaster. And then Xanadu Blood, finally. Cad Bane's Ship. I don't see any world where it's in here. But it is a 6/6 for 6 attack that can tap down opponent's resources. Tapping down opponent's resources is actually kind of insane. I just don't think we have the stuff to bounce. So maybe I'd put it in requires a specific build, but I'm going to just say it's not constructed playable. I don't think it's a coaster. I think it's pretty good. So as is, set 2 only looks like 5 cards that we're definitely including in our main deck. You know, with another 9 that we should consider including and probably are going to include in our 60. We obviously can't have any of these, but this is like I have my Boba Fett box that like has all my stuff that could go in a Boba Fett deck ever. It's like those are the cards that are going in this box. This is the deck building box for Boba Fett. So, all right, 15 minutes. We banged through it. Sweet. Good luck with your Boba Yellow decks at Gen Con and playtesting. Let me know what you think about this video and about Mono Yellow Boba in set 2. GG. See you at the tables.